Hello, welcome back to Bioclass Bites. In this video, we are going to talk about factors affecting human population size. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like and share this video. In the previous video, we've talked about life expectancy, and we have established that as time goes by, the life expectancy of the world population is only getting higher from 32 years old. So global life expectancy in 1800s is around 32 years. But now, in modern times, from 2012 onwards, the life expectancy has nearly doubled. However, there's a discrepancy in the distribution of the life expectancy in the different parts of the globe. Some parts of the world only have 50 to 60 years of life expectancy. Some have around 70 years of life expectancy, while others have 80 years and above life expectancy. So to fully understand why there's this variation among the life expectancy per nation, we have to look into the factors that affect the human population size. Okay? So demography is the study of the size, composition, and distribution of human populations and causes and the consequences of changes in these characteristics. Okay, so in a nutshell, so this is how we visualize population change. Okay, so the change in a population. So that's births plus immigration. So this was discussed in the previous video on population dynamics minus deaths plus immigration. So you add those factors that increase the population, then subtract it from the sum of the factors that decreases the population. So that's how you get the population change of a particular area. Another way to visualize human population size is by looking at its crude birth and death rate. Okay, so that if you notice, no, there are differences in the population sizes. So that to have a better idea on how big or how small a population is, we can look at their crude birth rate. So crude birth rate is the number of live births per every 1,000 people in a population in a specific year. So this is a limitation in order for us to have a better idea on the similarities and the commonalities and possible differences of every nation's population. So how many live births per every 1,000 people in a population in a specific year or in a given year? Crude death rate is the opposite of that. What is the number of deaths per 1,000 people in a population for every specific year? So these are two good ways for us to visualize or to help us visualize the population size of a location. So studies show that there's a big difference in the exponential population growth rates between developed and developing countries. So developed is a way to describe first world countries, and developing countries is a term for third world countries. So developed countries only have an exponential growth rate of 0.25%. Okay? So it means that they only have a growth rate of 0.25%. So those are the first world countries, the developed countries, while the third world countries or developing countries are growing at a much higher 1.46% annually. Okay, so that's 6 times faster than a developed country. It means that poorer countries or third world countries have higher growth rate than developed or richer countries. The six fastest growing countries in terms of population are India, China, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. And the populations of China and India, these two combined, comprise 38% of the total world population. So that's quite big. Okay, these two countries together, that's almost 38% of all the people in the world. The next most populated is United States, with only 4.6% of the world's population. So these are the different factors that affect population size. The first And we will all look at them one by one. So the first is fertility. So this is the number of births that occur to an individual woman in a population. So fertility is the number of births or number of offspring that a woman gives birth to in her in a population. So that they count that fertility. Now, other ways to look at it would be other ways by which fertility is measured is by looking at the replacement level fertility. So this is mostly the ideal because this is the number of children a couple must have in order to replace themselves in a population. So couple, so that's the husband and wife, so that's two. So having two children means that the couple has achieved replacement level fertility. They only have two children that will replace them in the population after they die. Okay? And total fertility rate is the number of children a woman will bear throughout her lifetime. So total fertility rate, number of children a woman will bear in her lifetime. So this is based on the analysis of data from the preceding years in the population in question. So total fertility rate and the placement level fertility are measured by nation or by country. So you can learn more about fertility rate, and much of my diagrams will come actually from Our World in Data. And you can check out this article from Our World in Data, fertility rate. I'll provide the link in the description below. So this one was the latest one that I was able to get. So this is a map showing us the number of children born per woman as of 2019. So this shows us the total fertility rate of women in every country. So as you can see, mostly that's between 2 to 3 children per woman. So that's for these countries, US, Canada, this part of Brazil, Russia, China, Australia. However, in Africa, it's quite, they have a higher total fertility rate. It means that more children are being born per mother or per woman. So that's around 5, 6, 7 children per woman in those countries. Now, there's this idea that humans have achieved overpopulation, or there are more humans than the carrying capacity of the world. Actually, you can check out these videos from YouTube. So the first one is the population bomb. I'll provide the link in the description below. And this one is a TED talk by Alexandra Paul on overpopulation facts. Again, I'll provide the link in the description below, so you could check this out. It is true that there's really this alarming rate by which the human population has grown over the years. So according to research, again still from Our World in Data, so 10,000 BC or 10,000 before Christ or 10,000 years ago, okay? So the human population is only around 4 million, okay? So 2,000 8,000, 6,000, 4,000 BCE, okay, the human population number did not grow that much. So there's only around 0.04 increase per year. However, around 2000, around this time, okay, so here, as you can see, there's this slow, gradual increase of human population. So here, so around 600 million in 1700s, and then slowly rising to 990 million in 1800s, 2 billion, okay, in 1928, and now 2019, we are around 7.7 billion billion people as of last year. So that's quite a dramatic increase in just a short amount of time compared to how long the humans have stayed and have stayed in this planet. So there's this rapid increase just around a few thousand of years, right? Just a couple of years ago, a couple of thousands of years ago. So what are the different factors that cause this changes in population size? So children in labor, that's one. The cost of raising and educating children, availability of pension systems, urbanization of the country or the locality, and I think this is the most important, education and employment for women, infant mortality rate, average marrying age, and abortion and availability of birth control. So I recommend that you still visit our world in data, specifically fertility rate. And one of the sections here is that what explains the change in the number of children women have. Okay, what explains all of this, and how why is it different? Why is it different in every country in the world? So please visit that article. Very self-explanatory, very easy to understand, very rich in information. So I'll provide the link in the description below. So these are summaries of those factors that affect human population size. So the first one, they say that the more children work in developing countries, and they are considered important in labor force. Okay, so there are children who are supposed to be in school or studying at school, but due to extreme poverty, because they are in developing countries, they have already started working. So that's a reduction in the number of possible professionals or possible educated and professional workers in that country's labor force. The number two, people in urban areas. So urban areas, so those are the cities, metropolitan, region, rural are the provinces. Okay, so people in urban areas or metropolitan or cities usually have better access to family planning. So they have fewer children. And those who live in rural areas, okay, those who live at the far reaches of the nation, or those who are far from the cities, they tend to have more children because they do not have good access to family planning methods. Then, number three, the economic cost of raising and educating children determine their numbers. So, the economic cost in that country to educate their children says that the more children cost, or the more expensive raising and educating children are, the less children people tend to have. So, the more expensive the tuition fees are, in those countries, people tend to have fewer children. Next, when the infant mortality rate is low, or when the number of children who die at a young age, so infant mortality, so children's death, is low, people have fewer children. So it means that if there's an effective way to save those children with diseases, or to save those who were given birth with sickness or with illnesses, so the better medicine and the better surgeries that were performed on them, the chances of them to survive is higher. So if there's low infant mortality rate, people tend to have fewer children, because children are not being lost to death. Okay, so one of the reasons why people have more children in the past is that there's very high infant mortality rates. For example, if you have 9 children, 7 of them will die at a young age, only 2 will reach to maturity, okay, or to adulthood. So in the past, people tend to have more children, but nowadays we have excellent pediatric um, doctors, we have excellent hospitals, so people tend to have fewer children. Now, this is very important to me because I am a feminist, and I think we should all be feminist. If women have educational and economic choices, they tend to have fewer children. What does it mean? And you can actually verify this. Ayan o, women's empowerment, increasing of well-being and status, technological, economic, and educational, all of these are actually factors that affect the number of children they have. So if women have good educational background, they tend to have fewer children because they have understood what it takes to raise children. Okay? And if women are educated, most likely they are also employed. And if they have jobs that occupies them, they tend to have fewer children. Okay? So the more educated a woman is, the fewer children she has, and the more economic choices. It means that if a woman usually earns her own money and she has a stable income, she tends to have fewer children than those who rely on their husbands for support. That's why women, we need to be educated. We need to have our own degrees. We need to have our own jobs. We need to have our own profession so that we can take control of our lives and dictate how we will live our lives. Okay, because it's quite, it's quite common. It's quite weird to hear about it now, but in the past we did not have that much choice. Okay, it was only recently that women were allowed to vote in some areas of the in some countries of the world. Okay, it was only recently that women were allowed to drive in some parts of the globe, in some countries. Okay, and the number of professional women in jobs, particularly in STEM, in engineering, in accountancy, in other fields are rising only in the past decade or past few decades. So um, whatever it is, whatever freedom that women are enjoying right now, we owe it to all the women in the past who fought for those rights. Okay, because they did not have those rights before. Okay, so the whatever it is that we're enjoying right now, we owe it to those women, and we owe it to them to make justice of those rights that were given to us. So to be educated and to have our own economic freedom. Then number six, the older the age at which women marry, the fewer children they usually bear. So younger women, they tend to have more children because they have longer reproductive stage. Women who marry older, around 30 and above, 30 years old and above, they tend to have fewer children. The number seven, the availability of reliable birth control allows women to space children and determine the number of children they bear. Okay? They bear. So this is actually connected to this. So those women who have access to family planning because they tend to live around urban areas, they also have fewer children than those women who do not have access to family planning methods or reliable birth control. They tend to have more children. Right? Especially in those countries wherein abortion is still considered illegal. If there are available private or public pension systems, so these are for those who have already retired and do not already and are no longer part of the labor force, but they still receive pensions, okay, from either from the government, public, or from insurance companies. Adults will have fewer children because they do not need children to take care of them in their old age. Okay, so if there are available pension systems, which in some parts of the globe are very, very good, okay, some parts of the globe, European, okay, Scandinavian countries, okay, some parts of the globe have very good pension systems, so they tend to have fewer children, unlike here in our country, the Philippines. And lastly, if abortions are available and legal in those countries, women tend to have fewer children, right? Because, of course, if they are not ready and willing to raise an infant, they tend to have fewer children because the children were never born in the first place, right? So this graph supports item number five, that if women have educational and economic choices, they tend to have fewer children. So it shows us women's educational attainment versus their number of children per woman. Okay, so it shows here the number of years of schooling of women in reproductive age, and then the number of children they have. So it says here that the more years spent in school, the lesser children they tend to have. Okay? And the less years spent in school, so they tend to have more children. Okay? So as you can see here, countries such as US, Russia, Italy, South Korea, Jamaica, they tend to have only between 2 to 3 children. And they've spent 10 to 12 years in school. Okay? Okay? Average, that's the average, 10 to 12 years. Okay? While those in countries such as Nigeria, Mozambique, Afghanistan, Senegal, Yemen, so these countries, here, the women here have fewer years in school, only between almost zero or none, okay, to only 2 years in school. They tend to have 6, 7, 8 children per woman. Okay, so the Philippines, we are somewhere here. So on average, Filipino women spend almost 10 years in school, and our average number of children is between 2 to 3 children. Okay, so okay, not that bad. Now, this one supports number 6. The older the age at which women marry, the fewer children they bear. So these are evidences. So it says here that these are the number of births. So from 2 to 7. And then this is the median age, okay? Median age by which they have children. So the older they have children, or the older they tend to marry, the fewer children they have. So those who got married between 30 to 40 years, such as in countries such as Japan, South Korea, Macau, Moldova, Ireland, China, they only have between 0 to 2 children. Okay? While those who got married at a younger age, between 20 years old, around puberty, and then up to 20 years old, they tend to have more children, 5 6 7 children, or 5 6 7 births in their lifetime. So what are the solutions in successfully influencing population size? Number one, empowerment of women. We've seen this in 2 data sets, that if women are empowered, if women spend longer years studying at school and having higher educational attainment, and eventually being employed, having their own financial freedom, they tend to have fewer children. Okay? And if they have a choice to marry later in life, okay, if they have the choice to marry later in life, they tend to have fewer children. So the Philippines is somewhere here between 20 to 30, so let's say 25 years old. So the average births is around 3 births per women here in the Philippines. So if women are empowered, we have our own choices on who to marry, what age we want to marry, if we want to finish our studies first, if we want to be employed first, if we want to be financially independent. Women tend to have fewer children because they have a say on what will happen to their bodies, right? And what will happen to their lives. This is why I'm so passionate about education, because education solves a lot of problems, not just climate change, not just HIV crisis and HIV pandemic, not just environmental problems and ecological problems, even issues on population can be solved by education. That's why it's so important for us to actually go and learn something at school. Because at your age right now, you might not be appreciating what you're studying, but sooner or later you'll see that the more you know, the more information you have, the better decisions in life you tend to do. And those decisions actually shape your lives and shape your destiny and affect the kind of parents you will become someday. Second solution would be reducing births, okay? So ideally, it's replacement level fertility. So having enough children to replace the couple in the population. So that's around 2 children, okay? So that there will be no increase in the population if only the numbers will replace the ones who will eventually die at the end. Next, family planning and access to it. Okay, we've established that availability of birth control and family planning makes it easier for women, for families to have fewer children. Economic rewards and penalties. This has been done by some countries. There are countries such as China, wherein they had this one-child policy, and if you have if you have only one children, you have um, lesser tax to pay, and then your children have priority for job interviews or something. You can search about it online. And if you have more children, sometimes you will have tax penalties or something like that. So that this is actually this was effective in countries such as China. Environmental refugees, okay, and migration are also good possible influences, or good possible influences in population size. So those who migrate to countries with very few population, okay. So for example, if countries with high population migrate to those areas with low population, eventually it could balance out the population of both countries. But the question is, are those first world countries going to let that happen? Okay, so that's one economic issue that we have to think about. Okay, so next. Okay, so however, all of these are true. All of these concerns about overpopulation, number of children will eventually have. All of this are true. However, as we gather more and more data, we started to form powerful predictors of a country's population, and we call that the population pyramid. Now, this is not a recommended video. This is a required video from TED-Ed. You need to watch this video because it will explain everything you need to know about population pyramids. I'll provide the link in the description below. So this is an example of a population pyramid. So this is United Kingdom 2010. This is their population pyramid. And this is how we read them. So the population pyramid is divided into the male section and the female section. So the males are usually on the left, females on the right. Then in the middle, you will see the categories of the age or the age brackets by which the populations are divided. So 0, 5 years old, 10, 15, 20. So the categories of the population. Then another thing, if you still remember age structure, it's also divided into pre-reproductive stage. Okay, so that's the young ones. Okay, pre-reproductive stage, the reproductive stage. So this is the working stage, the number of people who are capable to sustain the country. Okay, and then the post-reproductive stage. So that's working age. That's between 15 to 60. And then the post-reproductive stage, those who do not reproduce anymore, the elderly, that's 60 years old and above. Okay? So as you can see, if a country has high pre-reproductive stage, it means that the country has an increasing population because this level will go to this level. So if there are many here, then there will be plenty here, and then plenty here. But if a country has few, for example, in United Kingdom 2010, they have fewer children than there are adults. So we can say that the country has decreasing population. Okay, so we have several examples. All of those are shown in this video. That's why I'm requiring you to watch this video. So I thought this is another way to see population pyramid. So I've mentioned that males are found on left side, females on right side, and then they're categorized based on pre-reproductive stage, so ages 0 to 14, reproductive stage 15 to 44, okay, and then post-reproductive stage 45 and above. So in countries such as Guatemala, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia, since they have more children than adults and older people, they are said to have countries undergoing rapid growth because this will be promoted here and then this will go here and then eventually they will get older. So the country is increasing in population. But for countries such as United States, Australia, and Canada, as you can see, they have quite a few, just a few number of children. So more or less, they tend to follow replacement level fertility. These um, adults are just having enough children to replace them. So it's almost equal, as you can see, to replace them in their population. So they tend to have slow growth. Zero growth, okay, so this one, they have totally followed replacement level fertility. So countries like Spain, Austria, and Greece, they have limitation. They just have a limited number of children. So these are the number of adults. They just have this number of children. So they just have two, okay? So they compared to a zero growth, to slow growth, zero growth, as you can see, there's no increase in the number of children. While countries such as Germany, Bulgaria, and Sweden, they have a negative growth. There are more adults and more older people than there are children. Okay, I think countries like Japan also have this problem. They have more older people than adults and then than children. Okay, this is problematic because of course the population is growing. We have to feed all of them, educate all of them, but at the same time, this is also problematic in such a way that there are more people who are enjoying pension. It means that they are receiving money, but they are no longer part of the workforce. They are no longer contributing to the labor force of that country, but yet the country has to pay them. And who will replace them if the children's generation are fewer? So that's also a thing to consider. So how about the Philippines? Where do you think we fall under? Are we rapid growth or slow growth, zero or negative growth? So this is the population pyramid of the Philippines um, for 20 years. So 2000, 2010, and 2020. So what do you notice? What do you notice? So in 2010, we can be described as a country having rapid growth. Okay, we have more children, more population in the pre-reproductive stage, and then fewer here in the post-reproductive stage. But just after a span of 10 years, we see a decrease in the number of children adults are having. Okay, so there's this decrease. Okay, so from for example, instead of having three children, couples are only having two children. More and more couples are having two children. Okay, so even if there's a population growth, the distribution of the population changed. So as you can see here, we have more older people than 10 years ago. Now 2020. So this is our population pyramid. You can see here this drastic decrease in population. Okay, so this is around ages 0 to 4. Something happened here, okay, in this time, okay, that there's this decrease in the number of children that adults were having. Okay, so we are slowly going towards slow growth and going to zero growth. Okay, so from rapid growth in 2000, then slow growth, now we are going towards zero growth, just a span of 20 years. Now, this phenomenon, this shift in population pyramid can best be described by the concept of demographic transition. So this is a phenomenon and theory which refers to the shift from high birth rates and high infant death rates to having low birth rates and low death rates. It's the shift from having more children to having lesser children. That's demographic transition. Now, what are the factors for that? Because of having advanced technology, education, and economic development, as well as the other stages between these two scenarios. So, having advanced technology, education, empowerment of women is the reason why countries undergo changes in their population pyramid from rapid growth to eventual slow growth and negative growth. So the demographic transition can best be described in 5 stages, and we will discuss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 stages as we go along. Um, so, by 2009, the existence of a negative correlation, it means opposite relationship between fertility and industrial development. It means that as the country becomes more developed, as it goes higher, fertility goes lower. So that's a negative correlation. One goes higher, the other one goes lower. Or if there's high fertility, it means that the country is not high, it means that the country has low industrial development. So these are the demographic transition in 5 stages. So you tend to have stage 1 or a stable or slow increase. Okay. Then stage 2, very rapid increase. Stage 3, the increase slows down. Okay, as you can see here. That's what's happening right now. Then stage 4, falling and then having a stable population, and then stable or slow increase since the country now can afford to have more children. So let's look at stage 1. This is usually seen in pre-industrial society, or those that are not yet industrialized or not yet developed. So how do we describe countries at stage 1 of demographic transition? They tend to have high death rates and high birth rates. Okay? So they tend to have high death rates and high birth rates. The population growth is typically very slow at this stage, because the country is mostly focused on availability of food supply, not so much as professional and economic development, but just to feed the population. So unless the society develops new technologies to increase food production, this will eventually cause a more problematic situation for the country. Okay? Any fluctuations in birth rates will soon be matched by death rates. So even if more children are born, more and more people are dying because they cannot be fed. So again, new technologies to increase food production, that's STEM again, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is why we need to have more STEM graduates to address this problem on food production. Stage 2 of demographic transition is for those developing countries. Okay, so that's us, that's the Philippines. So we tend to have the death rates tend to drop quickly due to improvements in food supply and sanitation. Okay, thanks to advancement in technology. Okay, because of food supply, sanitation, medicine, and and under industrial development, it increases the life expectancies and reduce the disease of that country. And so as you can see, we have here we tend to have more survivors for adulthood that reaches into old age. Without our corresponding fall in birth rates, this produces an imbalance, and the countries in this stage experience a large increase in population. So this is what probably could have happened to us in the past around 1990s, 2000s. Then stage 3, so these are all what the countries are going through, ha. So the Philippines might have started here, and then we are slowly moving to the stages. So now this is the next stage, stage 3, urbanized countries. So you can see from pre-industrial to developing, now urbanized, okay, more and more cities. Birth rates fall due to various fertility factors. Okay, so there's now a decrease in birth rate. Okay, lesser children per couple, such as access to contraception, increase in wages, urbanization, increase in status and education of women, with female empowerment, reduction in the value of children's work, and increase in parental investment in the education of children. So more and more people are seeing the values of education, so they're having fewer children so that they can send them to school. So if I may, so this is why whenever I see posts in social media that says that education is not that important, education grades are just numbers, it infuriates me a lot because this is what they do not know. They do not understand the role education plays in improving a country's situation. Again, this is just one aspect. Education can also help in environmental issues and concerns, managing the world's resources, having better environmental laws to protect habitats of other creatures. So education is important. Whoever says that education is not important, do not believe them. Okay, it's a scam. Okay, so population growth begins to level off during stage 3 as the country transitions because of all these factors. Next stage is stage 4. So this is what's happening or seen in developed countries, and hopefully this is what will happen to the Philippines in the future, 10 years from now. Birth and death rates are both low. So lesser people are dying because of advancement in medicine and food supply, and then people are having fewer children. The birth rate is low because people have more opportunities to choose what if they want children. Okay? Due to improvements in contraception and again, women gaining more independence and work opportunities. If women are independent financially, economically, if they're educated, if they decide on what to do with their bodies, on who to marry, what to do, they tend to have fewer children. Death rates are also low, okay? So because of lower rates of diseases and higher production of food. So the population is well fed, so fewer people are dying. And so the last stage of demographic transition is for those advanced countries, such as many European and Asian countries. Okay, so at stage 5 of demographic transition, those countries now have higher death rates than birth rates. It means that there are now fewer fewer offspring that are being born, and then there are more people who are actually dying. So they could have entered sub-replacement fertility or below the replacement fertility. So if replacement fertility is having 2 children, some of them could have below 2 children, or so that's 0 or no children, no children or just having 1 children per woman. Because of this, the population is described to be aging, and there's a possibility that the population will eventually decline. So what are the means to support to solve that? That is for the fertility rate to go up. So for women to having more children and having mass immigration. Okay, so if they invite more non-native in their countries to go and immigrate in their countries, that could cause a spike or a jump in their population. So a country is said to undergo demographic transition, and some countries have already reached stages 4 and 5 of the demographic transition, while some countries are still between stages 1 and 2. Now, this video from Kyrgyzstan explains everything about demographic transition. That um, that 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 overpopulation or the human explosion can actually be explained through the theory of demographic transition. So this is also a recommended video. Kindly watch it, and I'll provide the link in the description below. Now, in the Philippines, I have here 2 news clips that actually supports that the country has already started undergoing demographic transition. So I recommend that you watch this from CNN News. So this is the Philippines population as of 2012. Okay, so watch this. I'll provide the link in the description below. And this is from last year, the Philippines population as of 2019. So if there's a population rise in 2012, um, just last year, according to NEDA, the fertility rate in the whole country has decreased. So we have really started undergoing demographic transition. So watch these 2 news clips, and I'll provide the links in the description below. Now this one is uh, of a country or a continent in focus, or a country that's undergoing demographic transition. So this is still from Kyrgyzstan, so entitled Overpopulation in Africa. So this is also a required video for you to watch. So it will summarize everything that and apply everything that we have tackled about factors affecting human population size. So I'll provide the link in the description below. So here are some notes that we have to remember about demographic transition. So we have to remember that it is only a model and does not necessarily say that this is what's going to happen. It can only give us an indication of the future birth and death rates for what the future birth and death rates may be for an underdeveloped country in reference or factoring in its total population size. Demographic transition also makes no comment on change to population because of migration. So this is another factor that it cannot take into consideration in its prediction. And there's also one disclaimer that it's not applicable for high levels of development or those beyond advanced levels, because it has been shown that for countries having a very high human development index, so they have high life expectancy, high education, high income, they tend to see an increase in total fertility. So this is what they were saying. So once the country has gone from developed to advanced country, okay, they tend to see that because of having a stable population and all the needs are met more than what's enough, people tend to have more children at this point in their demographic transition. Okay, so to summarize everything about population dynamics and carrying capacity, including human population, I recommend that you watch this lecture video entitled Population Ecology. I'll provide the link in the description below. That ends our video. I hope you learned something new today. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like and share this video. Till next time, goodbye.